this is so obvious, right? Like when you have a disruptive technology, the first use case is going to be like pornography, pimps are going to be recruiting women, like sextortion, all of these things. But it always seems to come out as a surprise. And so I now have so much more of like a specific viewpoint on it than I used to, and a little bit less patience for it, I would say.
Yeah. Well, you put yourself literally in the shooting range of some of these people. And when I saw the first project that you're going to be it hasn't come out yet, right?
Hasn't come out yet. No, no. Yeah. Like I remember, and I can get into at some point, like how I left CNN because I was tough leaving Liness, but now I run my own company. And I always thought like these stories about tech and society, they just like don't fit in a box. You can't do them in 2 minutes on TV. And like people are just aren't watching TV anymore, like, and if like traditional cable news in the same way. So we started out talking about topics online. And one of the topics we started talking about was about this guy named Mr. Deepfakes. And I've always believed, like, I think it was 2 years ago. And it's always just like, I feel like I have a blessing and curse if I can see a shit show coming, right? In tech, like I can just see it coming. And I remember 2 years ago, I'm like, we're talking about the rise of AI, but like, what about the rise of like deep fake pornography, right? Like, which is this
Can you
horrific.
explain? I have so many questions, but can you explain what like a deep fake pornography would be for a woman
Right.
listening?
So imagine if, like, you can see me right now. Imagine if you were to take like my image and my likeness and like essentially put it on like a porn star's body without my consent. And it looked so real. You couldn't figure out if it was me or if it wasn't me. So like these sexually explicit videos because now artificial intelligence can mimic our most intimate features. It can mimic our face, our voice, our bodies, right? It's not like just a copy and paste. And so you have the rise of this thing called deepfake pornography or sexually explicit deepfakes, where mostly men are creating hyper realistic, like, your wish is AI's command deepfake porn. So let's say, you get a woman rejects you. Now you can create like personalized pornography using her name, her image, and her likeness and her voice without her consent. And you think, well, this is like kind of weird and dark. And like, who's doing that? Millions and millions of people are doing it. Right. And I think it's like 2 years ago, I saw this coming because I did a lot on revenge porn back in the day, which is like someone takes an image of you that's a real image without your consent and puts it on the internet. And there was little recourse at the time. Now you have state laws. And so I could see this like on steroids with deep fake pornography coming. And then it took it happening to Taylor Swift. And like, I hate that it took it happening to Taylor Swift, but in January of last year, there were sexually explicit deepfakes of Taylor Swift that went viral, right? Where it was essentially like, it looked like her, it looked exactly like her, but wasn't her. And you could say, well, these images aren't real, but the harm is very real, right? You feel shame, humiliation, there's recourse, like, there's all sorts of things that can happen if this happens to you. And I remember thinking like, why aren't the laws catching up? Like we have no laws that protect women from this happening to them. And I think now you have a lot more laws and people are talking about it. But to go to talk to lawmakers about deep fake pornography, like all of a sudden this started happening in high schools, right? You had Nudify apps where like in a couple clicks, you could just point a camera at someone and you could digitally undress them. And like, it doesn't matter that it wasn't real, right? Because women have described it as digital rape. They've described it in these horrific ways. And so my whole thing is like, well, how do we get people to pay attention? And how do we get people to care? Because like, I can tell you, I have gone into places where you're surrounded by dudes and you're like, this is a big issue. And they're like, well, we're not really into porn, like talking about porn on our platforms or this or that. I'm like, this isn't about porn. This is a type of new harassment that degrades women, that is about power and control, that has real implications. And so I always try to put on my storytelling hat. And I'm like, when it happened to Taylor Swift, I was like, at least we have people paying attention. And because this is a woman, and I remember this, they had to actually take her profile and limit, interactions with it on Twitter, on X, because they weren't able to control it for like a day. So think about this. One of the most powerful women in the world had to be silenced to some degree because for them to handle this. And I'm just like, we've got to figure this out. And if I could look at it, there's this one site online called Mr. Deepfakes where like millions of people go to watch deepfake pornography of women who didn't consent. So you have all sorts of women who are basically like the nightmares. You're the star of your own, you know, that nightmare where you like go to school, high school naked. Like imagine now, like you're the star of a pornography video you didn't create, but it looks like you, it seems like you, and you can't tell a difference. And there was an anonymous man behind it. And he's been anonymous for 7 years. He's kind of like this white whale of the internet. And I was like, well, I think I want to track him down, you know? Because like I can't do my taxes on time, but like I really want to track down Mr. Deepfake. So it's just like, you know, this is like the gift and curse that I was given. And so we did this as a story. We started talking about it online. All these incredible moms got behind us. And they were like, we want you to find Mr. Deepfakes. I have a lot of like, this is a weird thing to state, but I have a lot of like hacker friends just from like my time and you know, covering cybersecurity and like good guy hackers, and they all donated their time. They worked threats from Russia and China for big companies. I could never afford them, but they were like, we have daughters, you know, so we want to make sure this guy is found, and what he represents, you know, is we call attention to. And so we had a lot of people donate their skills, and we kind of did it out loud. And we were able to track down the man we believe. Like we have a lot of different data points is behind this site. And so I can like say all that to say like, we still have a lot of work to do. We've presented a lot of this information in Washington. Like there's so much stuff kind of happening around it. But I just kind of branded it as like, this is one of the most dangerous men on the internet. Here's why you need to know his name before it's too late. And so, you know, my thing has always just been, how do we get people to pay attention to what's coming next in tech in a way that could be detrimental so we can have more agency over it and we can feel more power and have tech work for us and not against us.